Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Tori Barry, and I am the Director of Marketing and Outreach with Morgan Franklin Fellowship. And I am joined today by my colleague, Jillian Starman. And that's Dr. Jillian Starman. She is our Director of Education. Thanks for joining us today as we talk about breaking the social norm, talking with friends about money. We're offering this webinar today as April each year is proclaimed as National Financial Literacy Month. And this is one of the services and programs we're offering during this month of celebration. We are delighted that you are with us today. At Morgan Franklin Fellowship, we believe learning how to talk about money and understanding how money works in the real world are the first steps towards recognizing an individual's financial goals. We believe everyone should have the opportunity to become financially independent. We teach people how to save, invest, and grow their money while providing them with real-world opportunities to develop their business confidence. And we do it all one person at a time. We'll share a little bit more about our program at the end of today's program, but for now, let's get started. Most of us have been taught that money is just one of those things that you don't talk about with your family and friends. There can be a sense of anxiety, judgment, and vulnerability when it comes to talking about personal finance because money can deeply be intertwined with ego, identity, beliefs, and sense of self-worth. By being open, as difficult as it may be to start being open to conversations about money, we can put ourselves in a position to be even better informed about financial matters and share those skills with our families and friends. And for some of us, that even might mean our children. Here are a few things that we are going to cover today during our webinar, which will hopefully help us talk more effectively about money and to start being open and honest, perhaps helping ourselves, our families, and our friends to live a better life. We're going to talk a little bit about why do we not talk about money, why we should talk about money, how to talk about money in everyday conversations, and some do's and don'ts about money. With that, I am delighted to introduce Dr. Jillian Starman, our Director of Education, and she's going to take it away. Jillian.
Thank you, Tori. So this slide here is really, it kind of gets to the root of why we don't talk about money within our friends groups, within our family. A lot of it comes down to social norms. What have we either taken in because we've been told about what to do or what not to do with money, or we have observed it. It becomes a generational thing. Either you have a lot of money and you don't talk about it, or you don't have a lot of money and you don't talk about it. But it's kind of been ingrained into us. There are a lot of different cultures also that don't think that it's an appropriate thing to talk about money, whereas others do. So I think understanding sometimes our generational and cultural differences really does impact why we don't talk about money. Tori mentioned vulnerability when she did the opening. And I think some people there again, if they don't have a lot of money or they're uncomfortable with where they are, or maybe, you know, we made a bad choice. We bought something we shouldn't have. It cost us money. And so then we've got that guilt or shame. Sometimes there's people who have gone into debt to buy something that they wanted and then found out later on they really didn't need it, but they're still paying for it. I know that one of my kids bought a car, and before the car was paid off, it was wrecked and had to buy another car. And the payment that came from getting the new car got added to what he still owed on the old car. And so it was kind of a building debt. And he really was ashamed of talking about what happened. And so these things happen very quickly. And I think we need to take that guilt and shame off the table, as well as, not being comfortable talking about something. It's like anything that we do. The more we do it, the less awkward it becomes. So, you know, having conversations with people will help to do that. And then we're going to look at some of those things that we can do here in a little bit. And I think we can also put some blame about why we don't talk about money on the media, because they have a tendency to talk about people who have money, and they show the glitz and the glamour and everything that goes on with it. But yet, when you think about the people who have what we would consider great wealth, like Warren Buffett, he's very unassuming. And you think of Bill Gates, who has a lot of money that he gives away. I mean, he just looks like a geek. He's a nerd, but he has his money. He knows what he's doing with it. So I think looking at how the media portrays it can also influence it too. So now let's take a look at some of what we should be talking about. And I think the first thing that really is super important is that we need to understand that money does not define who we are. Money is just a tool. For example, if you had something that you used, whether it's for cooking, whether it's for gardening, whether it's for fixing something, and it's this really awesome tool, wouldn't you talk to your friends about it? You would say, hey, check out this tool. This is really cool. And this is how it helped me. So why can't we talk about money like that? Money is a tool to help us to get things that we want. It's to help us get to places that we want to go. And so the more we talk about it, it takes that emotion out of it, those emotions that we talked about in the previous slide of guilt and shame and awkwardness. And so it's becoming familiar with why do we talk about money like this? And it's just something in everyday life that we use, and we need to make it part of our daily conversation. So how do you do that? You can do it by asking your friend something simple like, where'd you go to lunch today? Do you think that that was a good value? Now, notice I didn't put a dollar amount on that. I could have said, hey, where did you go to lunch today? How much did it cost you? And so maybe changing your conversation from specifics to having like general conversations is helpful too. And there again, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of slides. So, and then I think the other one would be that talking about money, you can share your experiences. And so, for example, I have a friend who had used a credit card and had got her credit card pretty high. And then when COVID hit, she was having trouble paying it off. And so she just paid the minimums. She didn't realize that all of the interest was getting added to, and instead of her balance going down, it was going up. And so we had a conversation about this. And so an experience that I had early on with credit cards was able to help her. And so this is why we should talk about money, because the things that we have done or could have potentially had our friends have done, as we share this, we can help others maybe not make the same mistakes that we have. And so these are very important. So Tori, you want to take it off and talk a little bit more now about what we do with our money.
Sure. I love the thought that money is simply a tool, Jillian. I love that idea that it is just a means to an end. It is something that you use, but it does not define you. So what topics might you use every day to start talking about money with family or friends? These are 5 topics to think about as conversation starters. Why? These are things that most everybody has or encounters at one point or another in their lives. And there are so many others that you could add to this list. When Jillian and I were putting this together, we thought, well, there are things like food costs and utility costs, healthcare, and costs associated with children or aging parents. So maybe that's the cost of daycare, or maybe it's the cost of college, or it's the cost of your children joining sports teams. And boy, buying here in the Northeast, where lots of kids play hockey, and every time they prepare for a new season, they've grown 3 sizes, and the pads that you bought last year no longer fit, and you need to go out and buy new pads and new gloves. And then for many of us, it's also thinking about children who may have returned to our home and the costs that we are incurring or sharing as part of them returning home over the last couple of years. And for many of us, it's the thought of aging parents and how do you manage the costs of aging parents. And I know that for me, my parents are older, getting older every day, like everybody else's. But there are things that we're starting to have conversations about regarding their health care and their plans, and the roof on our camp needs to be replaced. And how might we do that? Because they're retired and have been retired for 15 years. So how do we do that? You know, what do we think about and how do we manage that as a family? But these 5 topics that we picked to talk about, again, are things that we are pretty confident that everybody talks about at one point or another in their life. So starting with budgeting, or I'm a real proponent of the term spending plan instead of budgeting, but they're basically the same thing. So starting to talk about if you have a monthly spending plan and how you keep track of it. So do you use an Excel spreadsheet, or do you use a piece of paper, or do you have cool apps? I know one of our colleagues is listening in and he has an app for everything. So do you have a cool app that you use for budgeting purposes that helps you reconcile at the end of the month? How's your income doing? How's your expenses going? And did you save appropriately? Talking about how to use your spending plan as a way to know where your money is going each month is really a great way to start the conversation. Talking about how you have to plan this month. Before we started this webinar, we were all talking and we were talking about, oh, it's time to register my car, remembering that, oh, there's an expense, or inspecting your car. Are those things that you're building into your budget that you know, this month you got to remember, oh, yep, I've got that car expense that I need to take care of. How do you adjust your spending accordingly when you have those types of expected or unexpected costs? We're coming up here, it's spring, and lots of us will be attending weddings over the summer. And how do you budget for those? Because budgeting for weddings now includes perhaps an overnight stay, a gift, the appropriate dress to wear, the travel expenses associated with getting there. So how do you manage those in your daily budget? Student loans. So here's one that there's over $1.7 trillion worth of student loan debt in the country today. So there is a really good chance that you or someone you know, or lots of people you know, have student loans. So talking about ways that you are managing your costs, or that you've heard that friends are managing the costs, sharing an article or ways to pay off the loans faster, or possible loan forgiveness programs are great ways to start a conversation about money. Credit scores and credit reports. Goodness gracious. So we all have them, but knowing how to access them and how to read them correctly is so very important. Sharing how you downloaded your free credit report from annualcreditreport.com, how you reviewed it and what you found is a great way to start a conversation. One of my favorite parts about this is I've taught these types of classes for a very long time, and one of my students actually pulled her credit report from annualcreditreport.com when we were in the room together. And she looked at it and she said, I don't have a credit card at Banana Republic. And that was something that she caught on her credit report. And it led to a conversation about, what do I do? Well, that's fraud. What are my next steps? And she was able to share that story with her friends to say, hey, maybe you want to check your credit report to look and see what's on your credit report. Or when I did, this is what I found, and here's how I managed it. So again, great way to open up a conversation is we happened to look at our credit report, or we just made a purchase and our lender shared with us our credit score and we were surprised to learn X. So a great way to start a conversation in a very general way. As Jillian mentioned, not mentioning dollars, but maybe mentioning what the outcome of what you learned was. Big ticket items and having to purchase them. So we've all had to purchase them. Think about a new appliance, a new car, a roof, or if you're my brother, a new furnace. Sometimes these are anticipated costs, but often they are really just unexpected. Sharing how you manage the cost, whether it's having an emergency fund or if you have a special savings account that you set aside money for home maintenance and repairs, is a great thing to start a conversation with. Maybe it's saying, yeah, we had to buy a new furnace and when we did, we had to use a credit card because we didn't have an emergency savings account or a home repair account. And we've learned our lesson. That's something that we're definitely going to do. For my brother, he actually pulled out to buy this new furnace from his emergency savings plan. And what that's done for him is it's prolonged a long anticipated repair to his deck that he was planning to make this summer because he needed to use those funds to buy this furnace. But again, being open about, yep, this is how we funded that big ticket item or what we learned from having to purchase a big ticket item that we were expecting or perhaps what we weren't expecting. And thinking of your future. Sometimes this is short term, sometimes that might be, how did you use your income tax check or how we're using our income tax check this year, to something a little more long term, like talking with your friends about planning for your retirement or perhaps a retirement home. Topics can range from investing in a company sponsored retirement plan, like a 401k or a 403b, a very casual drop in conversation. Yes, you know what? I did up how much we're contributing to a 401k as part of a conversation. Oh, what's a 401k? Well, let me tell you what a 401k is. Perhaps purchasing that piece of property for a retirement home. Talking about how you plan for these and what resources you are using are all great ways to start a conversation. Jillian, anything to add? Oh, you're muted.
I am. My dog was barking. I think that we're ready to move on to looking at some do's and don'ts of talking with your friends about money. And we have 4 of these that we're going to look at today. So the first one that we're going to take a look at is that you really need to not disrespect your friend's limits. For whatever reason, your friend may not be ready to talk about money or may be feeling uncomfortable about money. Sometimes it takes some people more time than others to feel comfortable. So if you're in a group having a conversation and somebody is very quiet, maybe you could have a side conversation with them rather than doing it in front of the group. So what you do need to do is you need to appreciate that you and your friends have different financial priorities. There again, going back to the slide that we talked about on why we don't talk about money, some of those things could be impacting all of this. And we really don't know everybody as well as we think we do. So I think having that appreciation is important. Can we move on to our next one? Here we go. And this one is that you really shouldn't judge your friends by what they do with their money. Like we've talked about previously, people can they can buy things that they really don't need. They can put a lot of money on something that maybe doesn't last as long as they've thought, but to be supportive of that. So rather than judging people for how they spend their money, going, oh, did you see Jim? He bought that really big convertible and, we live in the North. Why did he do that? So rather than things, like that, respect your friend's point of view. There are people that believe that certain things are status symbols and they have to have them if they're going to move up in their career. that's their choice. So, turning these into positive things, and understanding, maybe, asking, why did you do that, and finding out, and respecting that point of view, and that it is different from yours, is something to understand. So then our third point is that we shouldn't talk about money with our friends if the situation or the timing isn't right. So maybe your friend just made a huge blunder with money and they're feeling very vulnerable about it right now. And that is not the right time to start dissecting and having conversations with somebody. So be a little sensitive, to what it is. Another thing would be to not talk about something very personal, in a group setting. So, knowing when it's a good opportunity to do that. And like we've given you several examples, in this presentation, rather than talking about actual amounts of money, what you spent, talk about value. Talking generalities more than specifics, because some people are more comfortable in that, saying, well, I went here and we had a great time. And it was really a good value for the money, rather than saying, oh, I just went and I did this and it cost me $2,500. And, I feel like I saved it up and it was good. So having conversations, that respect what's going on, and then coming in and just being general with it, rather than, going, oh, how much did that cost you? Or how much did you make on this? Might be a much better way to do that. And so then our last one here is that we really don't want to let money come between friends. If you and your friends want to do something, and you can't afford to do it, the comment comes in is that, I don't have that in my budget this month. Could we do this instead? Um, and rather than, saying, oh, let's go out to eat this week, but your budget doesn't allow for that for this week because you have other priorities, then maybe you could suggest that you guys go out in a couple of weeks so you have time to save up to be able to do that. But then don't let the emotion come in, so then you get frustrated or angry because your friends are suggesting things that you don't have in your budget right now. So maybe having a planning meeting with your friends. When people go on vacation, usually they don't just up and decide, oh, I'm going on vacation today. They plan for it. And so whatever activities you're doing with your friends, there's the discussion around, time, money, what types of things you'd like to do. So rather than it becoming something that is, an emotional connection, take that off the table and realize that everybody has differences towards their money. Some people live paycheck to paycheck, partly because they don't know any difference. And if they have money in the bank, they feel like they have to spend it. Whereas other people have budgets that let them know that they have, say you've got $50 this week that you can use however you want. You could go to the movies, you could go out to dinner, you could have lots of different things that you could do with your money, but your friends don't have that same value or that same concept. So rather than making money conversations something that is, a negative thing, turn it around and make it into a positive thing. The more we talk about money, the more that we interact with our friends, our family, even our coworkers to some point of view, helps bring money to where it's not this taboo subject anymore, but it's something that we're talking about and we're helping each other move along. So I'm going to pass it back to Tori and she's going to wrap this up.
Jillian, thanks. I really love that comment that you have, the first one that you have under the dues. Appreciate that you and your friends have different financial priorities. I think that's really important, and especially at different points in your life. So when you're talking with somebody who might be older than you, their financial priority might be very different than what yours is. Or if you're speaking with someone young, their priority is very different. For instance, I have nieces who are very heavily into they're paying their student loan debt, and that's a real concern for them. I have a niece who is looking to purchase her first home, and that's their financial priority. So again, love that topic and being able to be open about what your priorities are. I think I shared earlier before we started, I drive a car that has 300,000 miles on it, and people look at me and say, that was made in 2007. But for me, it's a car I love. And my financial priority is really, if you knew me, you know that in the middle of summer, I try to be out and somewhere every weekend doing something, enjoying New England weekends. And driving that car gives me the flexibility to do exactly what I want to do. So why does this all matter? So these are some of the things that we've talked about today, but we know, there's really no doubt about it. Money is personal. It is impossible for you to know your friends' financial stories, just like they don't know all of yours. So inspire each other. Being open about conversations with money, you can put yourself in a position to be better informed about financial matters and share your skills with your family, friends, and even your kids. As we wrap up today's workshop, let's remember money is just a tool. We use money every day. So why don't we talk about it every day? And that money is just, going back to that, money is just a tool. And that's actually the quote. There's a quote, and that quote actually comes from Jillian, is it Ayn Rand, who that
Yes.
quote came from? Yeah. Money is only a tool. It will take you wherever you wish, but it will not replace you as the driver. Talking about how you use that tool to perform a function or to do a job does not define your self-worth. We also know that talking about money can help reduce stress, right? So even simple conversation starters and conversations like, did you happen to notice that the price of food is going up at the grocery store? Or I found a cool app that helps me put my spare change in a special savings fund, are great ways. You know, I talk about money in a variety of ways, in that I'm a big podcast listener. And I listen to one of my favorite podcasts is all about money. And I had a friend who got in the car the other day, and we were listening to a caller on the podcast talk about a certain financial situation. And at the end of it, I said, well, I would have done this. And they said, I would have done this. But it opened up a conversation for us about why your way is different. Is either of those better than the other? No, it's really what we value, each value, and how we came at it. So great example. And reducing stress by talking about money. Who can't live with a little less stress or judgment in their lives every day? So great reasons to talk about money in your everyday conversation. So as we wrap up, again, thank you for joining us. We're delighted that you have. At Morgan Franklin Fellowship, we truly believe that teaching people how to save, invest, and grow their money is really very important. And we like to do it one person at a time. And we do that at the very beginning through our Standards of Financial Literacy program, full of interesting information and very easy to navigate. It is 6 short financial capability lessons, all done online, and it lays the foundation to become what we call an MFF Fellow. Becoming an MFF Fellow is the ticket to then access additional programs and opportunities for mentoring, networking, and internships. And the best news is all of this is free, so we encourage you to join us. Share our website with your friends and family and begin sharing how you save, invest, and grow your money. We look forward to seeing you soon, and thank you for joining us. Have a great day.